PataBid Quantify power user tips. Yes, no questions in assemblies. Basically using the if formulas here. So what we're going to do is I'm going to create just a very simple demonstration here. I'm going to create a new assembly first, and I'm just going to call it yes, no assembly. Make it an assembly. There we go, and add it in. And then when I double click on it, I have my empty assembly here. We have a special item called the yes no item in the database here. So if you do a search for yes/no, it'll pull it up right here. It is stored under electrical, miscellaneous electrical items. And I can add this into my assembly here. But what I actually want to do first is add a variable to my assembly. And so what I'm going to do is add variable. And then I could call this whatever I want to use as my prompt to the user. So in this case, it might be something like include ground or include sprinkler heads if you're on the fire sprinkler side, include end elbow or non-end of run. There's a whole bunch of potential use cases here. So you put in the question you want to ask, and then you set it to a text type and add that in. And now if I pull up that yes, no item here and I go to add it in, I'm going to tie it to that question that I'm asking. And then I want to put 0 of these in because I don't actually want this to show up anywhere in my estimate. So its existence is simply there to ask the question. So if I run this assembly right now, we'll see that it's going to pull up an include ground or whatever I want and yes and no here that the user can select. I can now use that in my formulas here. So if I wanted to add in something, so let me clear that and we'll pull up some wire here. Or again, if it's fire sprinkler, you could pull up your sprinkler heads, your end of run elbow versus a T, that sort of situation. But using electrical here, for example, I may want my green wire here. So I'm going to pull that in. I would have questions in there around, do you want the size of this, that sort of thing. But for right now, I'm just going to pick a size and make this up here. So quantity. And then what I want to do, though, is actually not put in the quantity here. I want to put in an if question. So here's how we can formulate if then. So it's if and then what you're trying to plug in here. So in this case, I want to base it on the include ground variable there. Now, it is critical when you're putting these together that you enclose that in quotation marks here. So I'm going to call this include ground. And then if it equals in quotation marks, yes. So this is the key here to include that formula in here, put it in quotation marks around the variable. And then if it's true, this is what it's going to be. So in this case, I want it to include quantity. And if it's false, nothing. And put the closed round bracket on that. So this is how I would formulate that if then to bring in after asking, do we want a ground wire in here? And so I'm going to hit add on that. And now if I run this, I could say yes, and I want 100 of these. And let's see if this goes. Here we go. I have 100 of these and 0 of this miscellaneous item. So it is 0 here. It will not show up anywhere in an estimate. If I run it again, and I select no here and put in 100, I have 0 of everything in here. So this is how you can start to ask some very creative questions. If you create specialty items with multiple text options in them, so surface mount, in wall mount, those sort of things, recessed, exposed, you can put all of that into a special item with just a text variable. And then you can bring that item in here and use it to drive the questions that you're asking the user. So this is how we can create some very advanced, very interactive assemblies.